G'day fans and welcome back to another exciting episode of Talk and Stuff. We're here to talk about science fictions and with me is my dude Mr. Aaron. It is still winter, it is still cold, it is still wet, but we are going to warm everything up with our conversations. Is that right there, Mr. Aaron?
You're back again to have your cockles warmed. I've been talking stuff all today and all yesterday, but I've still got enough stuff to talk about to talk for another hour or two tonight.
Absolutely love it. Now we got so much stuff to get through. It's absolutely mind-boggling. But the thing we've got to kick it off with is an absolute ripper. Is that if you remember, for those who watched it last week, we did a trivia quiz regarding aliens in aliens movies. Right? You had to sort of name the alien and what movie it came from. And there was this particular person from Canada who was joining us. Now we don't know if it's Jean or Jean. But we're working on the assumption it's Jean. We're going with Jean, and that Jean is a male, right? So we absolutely have no idea. I don't know if even Jean will be back again tonight. But the thing was that as we got towards the end of the quiz, Aaron said that whoever does really, really well can get a gift voucher for Aaron's shop, which is absolutely fantastic. And we're going to give it to Jean. Once we asked Jean where Jean lived, thinking might be down the road or something. No, Jean lives in Canada, right? It's like, well, that clearly wasn't going to happen. So we said, well, your gift voucher is not going to go anywhere. And I mentioned to Aaron today, and I said, what if some other random dude just happens to walk in and saying, "G'day, I'm Gene from Canada. Can I have my gift voucher, please?" And of course, Aaron responds with, "Oh, no, you can't have that. You can't have some random puppy walking in saying they're the Gene from Canada without providing some proof." And we thought, who's the most likely person who's going to walk into the store pretending to be Gene from Canada? It's, of course, going to be Moneybags. So putting on the mask, walking in with a dodgy Canadian accent and a dodgy passport, saying, "Hey, man," as you can see there, "where's my gift voucher?" What do you reckon about that, Mr. Aaron?
I know. I've got to be very vigilant. I mean, for those who don't know the joke, just about every door prize, giveaway, trivia competition, or anything that we've actually done, Sully has won. Moneybags has won. Meaning one of the more I guess, financially stable people who come into the shop never buys anything because he's got an endless supply of gift vouchers.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it too. Yeah, Aaron's shop, excellent, high prices. So, and I'll tell you what, fans, when we only came up with that idea like 2 or 3 hours ago, we whipped up the picture, and I swear I've been laughing for hours. Absolutely. Actually, it's a good point. It looks like Elliot Goblet. I hadn't thought of it. But yes, if Gene Moneybags from Canada walks into the store looking a bit dodgy, asking for his gift voucher. Oh, gosh. What do you reckon of that, Mr. Aaron?
Just imagine if Jean or Jean from Canada came over and actually looked like that. I go, "You're not having the gift voucher, but this is really me."
It's like, sure. You look nothing like Sully. Good to see Karan's joining us. I tell you what, Karan might be joining the show tonight, but one thing he didn't do was pop into the store on Saturday when I was working there, so I feel totally unloved. Thanks for that, Karan. You can blow it at you for everyone, son, but that's okay. I get it. I'm used to being ignored. That's the reason why I have Aaron on the camera, because he can't ignore me. That's how the system works. Is that right, Mr. Aaron?
Yep, and I agree. He's saying Longlegs is a good movie. I haven't seen it. I've heard good reviews, and I do want to go and see it. It's a bit of a horror, though, so a bit too scary for Dags.
Yeah, it would be too. Absolutely fantastic. All right, we're going to get straight into the show. We've got so much to cover off. It's not funny. A few things a bit old school, a bit old new school as well. One of the things that popped up in the feed recently is the constant talk about good old friggin' Star Trek 4. Not Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home, but the Star Trek 4 from the Kelvin universe. I've got no idea if they're ever going to make this movie. Personally, I don't think they ever will. But have you got any thoughts about this, Mr. Aaron? Do you reckon a Star Trek 4, in whatever shape or form it will be, do you reckon that's actually a bit of a goer or just a waste of breath?
I have some inside chatter on that, and I don't think it's going to happen because from what I was told, when they did the 3-picture deal with the stars of those movies, and then the 4th movie they renegotiate because they're out of the 3-picture deal, and they also wanted to bring Chris Hemsworth back into it. And it just blows the budget out so much with just the actors before they even start filming. It's not going to be profitable. So I would say if a Star Trek 4 happens, it's going to be a reboot, or it won't be a continuation of the Kelvin universe. Maybe Kelvin Wellborn and his brother could be the captain instead of Hemsworth and Pine.
Kelvin Wellborn's got his own timeline. How good is that? So you can imagine Chris Hemsworth saying, "Well, this is what I got paid for doing Star Trek 2009. Let me just add some extra zeros on the end of that that figure that I got paid." and we'll go from there. So
the other thing as well, Chris Pine wasn't as big as he was. You've got to remember when he started out, and Hemsworth wasn't as big, and now they've both been in, you know, big movie franchises. So it's the money that's a stumbling block, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think if they did do it now, it'd be a waste of time. Unless, as you said, they do it from scratch all over again. Forget it, will not happen. Yeah, I tend to agree. But as always, there's always people saying, "Oh my God, there's talks, there's discussions, and whatever." I mean, the last movie was like nearly 10 years ago. Now you think they would move on and do something completely different. Kelvin has said yes, he will be there, which is cool. We didn't even tell you where there is, but there you go. Go on.
A lot of people think it's called the Kelvin timeline because the ship was the Kelvin. No, not true. Kelvin Wellborn was actually the black hole they all got sucked through into the alternate universe.
Believe me, fans, that's a black hole you don't want to get sucked into. Where am I going with that? All right, we're going to move on. This one popped up on my feed today. I didn't even know they were even doing this. There's a friggin' TV series based in the Alien universe called Alien Earth. And believe it or not, fans, it's a prequel to the 79 movie. What is the deal with that, Mr. Aaron? Alien Earth.
Well, it's one of those things, as soon as you franchise something and have it on streaming services or whatever, they've got to pump out as much content as they can to get the money back that they've put into it. So I think we're going to be getting all different types of shows, prequels, sequels, alternates, Alien versus Predator, movies, Romulus, all this different stuff. The best thing, I should have sent you a picture, but I didn't. I saw today that there's a new alien head popcorn collectible thing at the cinemas in America, and it actually looks really good. You know, so if you're in the States, we probably won't get them here, but you can get an alien head full of popcorn, like the June worm.
Very, very cool. And we know how that looked. So with the alien head popcorn thing, what happens, fans, is you have the popcorn in your mouth. And of course, you know, when you're watching a movie, you don't want to have to keep doing this all the time. So what happens is the alien mouth opens up and the jaws come up with the popcorn and it goes straight into your mouth. You just stand there, just keep watching the movie. How good is that, mate? If they ever market that, it came from me first. I love this concept. Hang on, Russell said he liked the first two Kelvinator treks. I love that. So like they're actually making refrigerators in Star Trek now, but the third one he couldn't make sense of, which was Star Trek Beyond. Sorry, dude, go for it.
I was just going to say, you eat the popcorn and then about a day later, it like explodes and bursts out of your chest.
Out of your chest, exactly right. Absolutely love it. Anyway, Alien Earth. Make of that what you will. I mean, as I said, I only found out about it today, and I go, "Oh, yeah, right." So you are right. It's like this franchise thing has gone burko. It's like, what prequel can you do? I mean, that makes no sense. I mean, if it's got to do with humans, I mean, the first time they discover the xenomorphs of any description is in Alien. So what? Unless it's set on a different planet or something. Oh, I don't know what the deal is with that. So.
You know, they've taken it too far. Where Kenneth Branagh directs Aliens on the Orient Express.
I think you're looking at all you know, you get all the people who are dressed up in their nines and they're wearing the black ties and you've got the gowns and that, and then over there is a xenomorph sitting there going, "It wasn't me." Yeah, he's munching down on a face hugger or something. So Chrissy said, are all the writers out of ideas? I reckon that is true. I'm just sick and tired of the reboot, sequel, prequel of classics. Yes, it's I've got to admit, this one kind of threw me off and go,
you know who they need to come to? They need to come to us for us to produce Heroes of the Empire.
With freaking hell, Maxwell Dagmar. Yeah, exactly right. And these lovely lass, what was the name? Saoirse, wasn't it? So,
Saoirse Brightburn. Saoirse Brightburn,
mate, tell you what. Yeah, she might burn brightly, but she only burns half as long. Anyway, I'm trying to think of a Blade Runner quote, but I'm just mucking it up. Anyway, doesn't matter. Move on. Heroes of the Empire.
Burning his candle at both ends with that one.
Yeah, with a flamethrower at this right. Here we go. We want Dagmar. Well, there you go. No autographs, just throw money. Lovely ladies at the top end of the queue, at the head of the queue, rather, which is very, very cool. All right, so that's what I thought was pretty cool. Here we go. As Disney now owns the Alien franchise, does that make the Alien Queen a Disney princess? Absolutely, it does. So Queen Armadillo has. What, go on.
How dare you presume that anyone on Disney identifies as a princess?
So yes, if you get a picture of all the Snow Whites and what are they Sleeping Beauties and whatever else, you can shove an Alien Queen's head straight into there.
Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, and Doctor Who. They're all now Disney princesses.
Absolutely. You freaking hell. Good on you. Yes, the light that burns twice as bright burns half as long. I kind of got it. I was trying to rush it out and I ballsed it up. So anyway, I was too busy thinking of Saoirse Brightburn. Let's move on, shall we? Now, this one is not related to news at all. Funnily enough, this got released 5 years ago. Some do, like we actually showed a couple of weeks ago, people are doing all this AI related trailers and blah, blah, blah. They're all over the place now. It's just completely out of control. And of course, fan films have been around for 1,000 years and people doing all sorts of weird and wacky stuff in the movie and blah, 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 blah. But Aaron sent me this and I thought, well, this is actually kind of different, a little bit interesting, right? So it got released 5 years ago and somehow or other it just got rediscovered like this week or last week. And some dude, this Matthew J. Killian guy, has taken the Macquarie artwork from all the Star Wars movies and found a way to make the move to make a trailer out of it. Now, when I first looked at this, I thought, that isn't CG like they've animated the characters. They've actually got actual people. And I found out later they did. They'd actually filmed their own bits. But I've got to say, this is actually very, very clever. And what do you reckon of this, Mr. Aaron? It's still a bit of out-of-the-box thinking.
Well, it appealed to me because with the current trend of the AI generated, what would a movie look like if it was filmed in the Republic 50s era kind of thing, this isn't taking that concept where they film it from a different period. They're taking a concept where you've already got all this original amazing concept art and turning that into the trailer. So where the other ones I was a bit, they look good, but it's a fad. I thought this one was really amazing because we literally could have got Star Wars looking like this if he'd presented the concept art. They'd loved it, given him unlimited budget, and they just said film the concept art. So I thought it was a really interesting trailer.
Yeah, very, very clever. I'll give them all kudos for it. That's something I just didn't even see coming. So, Star Wars fan trailers over Disney. Well, yeah, some of them yes, some of them no. They all started in the early 2000s when people started getting digital technology on their computers and people started making fake Attack of the Clones trailers. And in fact, there was an Australian guy who did it and did such a good job. People thought it was the real thing. And since then, everybody sort of does them. So I've always said, though, to be fair, hang on, just quickly, the one job you do not want in the entire planet is the person who's responsible for producing trailers for anything to do with Star Wars, because the minute it gets released, the fans will just recut it up and probably do a better job of it. It would just be unbelievably stressful. Yeah, sorry, dude, go for it.
The first thing I remember fans doing where I was like, that's good, and downloading it on dial-up was Troops, which was a riff on Cops, where the sand troopers went out to the Lars homestead where there'd been like a disturbance. So I guess that's a lot of stuff stands on that shoulders, but that's the first one I remember where fan produced stuff actually made me laugh and was good.
Yeah, some of it can be actually very, very clever. And you are right, Christy, Princess Leia is definitely a Disney princess. Funny enough, at the very start of the show, we showed a picture of Moneybag Sullivan. There was actually a Lego convention, and all these Disney characters all stood up for a photograph, and he jumped in his Star Wars costume right at the very end. This is like 2014, and he said, well, Star Wars is now owned by Disney, so I'm allowed to be with them. Talk about the odd one from the group, but hey, good on you, dude. Well done. Absolutely fantastic. Troops was a crack up. The funny thing about Troops, just very, very quickly, people thought it was the first serious Star Wars fan film ever made to be released anywhere, like a serious hardcore one. And it wasn't. Believe it or not, the trailer for Bounty Trail was released the year before, but it never got an online release. And that was actually a very serious production. Nothing to do with the movie that came out in 1999, but the trailer looked spectacular. Can't find it anywhere, but it did get released in 1996. So I thought I'd just mention that. Hotline has joined us from the Ukraine. Like to watch the show. Absolutely fantastic. We were talking about this as Maxwell Dagmar. Not signing off just yet, but how good is that? So very good stuff. Well, guess what? Any final words before we move on, Mr. Aaron, because we've got a lot to cover off.
I think it's great. We're an international show. Canada, Ukraine, and wherever.
I heard Fitzroy's very nice at this time of year. And you are right.
Yes.
Daniel is a Disney princess. There's never been a mistake on that one.
He put that wrong. Daniel ate all the other Disney princesses.
Oh, just be rough in the day. So one of the things we're going to discuss tonight, and this is one of your ideas, was to do with the idea of meshing up franchises into one. And funnily enough, of course, now we're talking about sci-fi ones because we know it's been done on the horror with Freddy and Jason and whatever else. And of course, one of the main big ones that have inspired this talk, of course, was Alien versus Predator, which I actually thought was a fantastic idea. It got released as a comic, then we got made into movies. And the idea stemmed from Predator 2, where you see an alien head in the back an alien head in the back of the Predator ship, right? And that was put in as a joke. The prop guys just said, we'll shove it in. 20th Century Fox owned the rights to both Predator and for Alien. They chucked the skull in, and it was all good to go. And it all sort of stemmed from there. Now, you've heard stories, is that right, Mr. Aaron, that Docky Who, which funnily enough, fans, we're going to talk about Docky Who tonight. And Aaron said, nah, don't worry about it tonight. People are sick of it, which is true. I am in particular. And mixing Docky Who with Star Trek. How cool is that, Mr. Aaron?
Well, this is one of those things where it was signposted in one of my favourite episodes ever, Space Babies, where the Doctor's companion, I think, says, that looks very Star Trek. And the Doctor says, I should take you to meet those guys one day, which was, a bit of a weird comment for him to make. But now San Diego Comic-Con is coming up, and they've announced that Russell T Davies is going to be part of a panel with Kurtzman. He's the one that who controls the Star Trek universe, isn't it, at the moment? So Kurtzman and RTD are doing a panel together, and everyone's like, why would they be doing a panel together? It's a really weird matchup, unless there may be some crossover coming up in the next series of Doctor Who, or even the TARDIS appears in a Star Trek series. I mean, the rights for that must be an absolute freaking nightmare. And I don't know if you've seen this week that Star Trek has been sold again and is going to a different, Alex Kurtzman, going to another channel. We don't know what's happening because of that. But it made me think, would I like to see that? In my honest opinion, no, I probably wouldn't. Because I don't know if they're two universes that really gel. The only thing I can think of is one of the things I've been pushing. Maybe the Doctor is in the land of fiction, so they can visit Star Trek because Star Trek is fictional or something like that. But we discussed this, and we were talking about, some of the other big franchises that have crossed over, and some of them have been very successful and some of them haven't. I think Alien versus Predator was good. Alien versus Predator 2 Requiem was one of the worst movies ever. And there's other big ones we'd like to see. I mean, I've always wanted to see Austin Powers mash up with Schindler's List. That would be a really great.
Freaking idiot.
I am joking. But one of the things is comic books have done this crossover for a while, and you can find just about anyone fighting anyone else in comic books because the rights is easier to work out.
Spanker made a point about Alien versus Predator was a good idea on paper, but terrible in the movies. I actually thought, as you said, the second film was terrible. I thought the first movie was really good, but you have to add the human element. You can't just have Alien versus Predator and nobody else. There's no story. So I kind of get the kind of trapped into a box, but the idea kind of worked. And the idea of having Docky Who and Star Trek, that would be difficult because you wouldn't know where to look, who's the main character and why are they there. It would be... Yeah. If someone did that as a comic and try to make a feasible story from it, maybe then it could be transitioned into probably live action or if not animated. So there is that. But you are right regarding rights and comics. There's been meshing stuff up all the time, as you've mentioned here. So, and some of them, I mean, I don't read comics, but I mean, I suspect some of them are like really out there, whereas others you go, that is actually a great idea.
Well, I've found a few of the ones I've found there I've put up, and people might know them, people might not. I didn't know Tarzan came out against the Predator. That would be great. Tarzan's going through one of the hottest seasons ever, and the Predator turns up. But the one I would have loved to see at the movie.
Hang on. The problem with Tarzan and Predator is it only goes for one page, right? Because there's definitely no contest. Continue on, dude.
The one I would have loved to have seen if they had managed to get, as a surprise, King Kong in Planet of the Apes. So imagine the apes were having a fight with the humans and they're losing, and they're like, okay, open the big doors, and they open the big doors and they've got Kong on their side and it comes out. That'd be something I'd cheer about if I saw it at the cinema.
Dude, what you got to do is the humans are taking over, right? And like, was it Cornelius or Caesar just says, release the Kraken, and Kong comes barging out. Imagine that. Or either that or say, the two apes having a conversation, Zaius and Cornelius having a chat, and he said, mate, I've got a dude down the pub, right? He's pumping the roids hardcore. wait till you see this puppy. I go, holy freaking shit, what have you been feeding? What have you been feeding to this guy?
And because all the apes can speak, you could have Kong voiced by like Morgan Freeman or something like that.
Kong would have to be voiced by Lou Ferrigno or something. Oh my god, that just killed me. That just made me laugh. They did. Oh gosh, I'm in one of those moods. Yes, very very cool. Anyway, yes, but in the comics, I can't see properly now; it's all blurry. I'm going to say in the comics they've done a lot of good things, but yeah, Predator and Tarzan was like Tarzan's just a dude, man. He's like, what the hell's he going to do? So he's just going to go oh, and the bullet, and you get the 3 lights on his head. Oh god.
Yeah, I could see how that could be a short episode. You know.
Just a little bit. Unbelievable. There are some other ones that you've kind of come up while I try to regain my composure. Yes.
Now, this is one of those things that they actually tried to do and they actually couldn't pull it off. But there is a fantastic, I think it's an amazing 60s show, The Invaders, which kind of was inspired by The Fugitive, actually, A Man on the Run. But where The Fugitive was on the run from Detective Trask and looking for the one-armed man, in The Invaders, you had Dr. Richard Kemble, who was the only man on Earth who knew there was an alien invasion clandestinely happening. And no one would believe him. So where you've got, I want you to believe, it'd actually probably be, I want someone to believe me. And who would be the people who believed him? It would be Scully and Mulder. Now, Chris Carter, who created the X-Files, did say that there is some Invaders DNA in the X-Files, and he did try to sort of finish the Invaders storyline off in the X-Files, but that never happened. Roy Thinnis, I think, did appear in the X-Files, but ended up being a different character. Could you have seen that happening?
Maybe. You know, they're on the similar themes. Why not mesh them together and see what works? I mean, the problem when you're meshing 2 franchises together, and we see this in movies with Kong versus Godzilla, right? They're both iconic characters by themselves. So you can't have one defeating the other or one overshadowing the other. In the end, it's got to be a stalemate because otherwise you alienate half your audience and go, well, I love Godzilla and Kong can't kill him and vice versa. So it's a question of whether the people believe the characters or what.
When roided up Kong went mental and realized that General Ursa was bad and just went plop plop plop.
It's like whack-a-mole. Yeah, exactly right. So that's the only thing, how you balance out the characters, and that could be the only iffy bit about meshing franchises like this. Hank had said X-Files and TMNT did a crossover, which makes sense. You can imagine because technically the turtles are not aliens, but they're obviously mutants. X-Files and the Night Stalker, yes. Well, actually, the X-Files was inspired by the Night Stalker, so you can imagine Mulder and Scully coming across Carl Kolchak, who, like, their methodology and how they go about these mysteries are completely different. So that'd be actually quite interesting, actually having Kolchak interviewing those two, because he's following them around everywhere trying to solve the whole alien mystery thing. So very cool.
You could imagine how Mulder would be inspired and love everything he said, and Scully would be, oh no, we've got another wacko who believes in all this stuff.
Yeah, that would be quite fun. But that actually, I think, is a good combination. You've made mention here about The Matrix and Terminator.
Now imagine this scenario where the machines are losing. So what do the machines do? They send a Terminator back in time to kill Neo's parents.
Oh, how's that? Yeah.
Now
the thing is, the problem is you wouldn't actually see Neo himself. You'd just be seeing the parents, wouldn't you? So, yeah, I don't know. Well, maybe.
Like, probably you've got Keanu Reeves old enough to play his dad now. You know,
actually, you're probably right. Yeah, he looks a lot like John Wick. What can I say? Kelvin said Darren McGavin was actually in the X-Files. Was he? I didn't know that.
He was, but again, he didn't play Kolchak. It was really disappointed. It was sort of like this alien in the water in a washing machine and through the house kind of thing, which I thought was a waste if you've got Darren McGavin. But again, he came and did it.
So you are right. Keanu Reeves could actually play his own dad, and the way he looks now with the long hair and the beard and all that, it would be interesting to see how that sort of worked. Yeah, it's an interesting concept, and why not? The problem is they're in the Matrix, so the Terminator would come back to Earth and suddenly find that, like, Sentinels are running the entire planet. So, but anyway,
no, it would be no pre the Matrix happening kind of thing goes back. So I don't know, because that's been for years and years. But you could iron it out, and it could be a good story. It'd be a different twist for Matrix and a different twist for the Terminator, wouldn't it?
Yeah, true. This one's a bit of a no-brainer. Of course, this is how you alienate the fan base. Star Wars and Star Trek together. It never ends well, no matter how you have
Do you
these
know what?
discussions. Is that right, Mr. Aaron? What?
Well, it's one of those things with what you were saying before. There's such big franchises with such big fan bases. How can you have one be better than the other or defeat the other in one universe or the other? But you know what? If they did the special effects and you had like the Enterprise in dogfights with TIE fighters, and you had the Death Star turning up, blowing up Federation planets and things like that, it's a mindless popcorn movie. And you know what? You get two fan bases going and watching it.
The funny thing is, I mean, it's been happening for decades now. You get people having discussions, fans saying, "Oh, Star Wars is better than Star Trek, and Star Trek is better than Star Wars," and they're like serious, they're hardcore. Like, which ship would the Defiant beat the Millennium Falcon, and really stupid stuff like that, and they believe it like it's the real thing. And the problem with those sort of discussions is they can make people very antsy. So if you did a Star Wars Star Trek thing, there's no way the thing would win. Right? It's almost like they see each other from a distance. Oh, on the sensors, we picked this ship up. The other ship says we picked that ship up. They fly past each other. So the Millennium Falcon going this way and the Defiant going that way, or the Enterprise. Done. That's as far as you go as far as a crossover.
We've had the president of the Star Trek fan club put his mark of disapproval on it. No thanks.
Yeah.
You can't see the Klingon Emperor being part of the Empire. I don't know.
No, I don't think so. Babylon 5 in June. No, I can't see that one connecting up. They're just way too different. I mean, you got to remember, they've got to have a bit of similarity of some sort. They can't be two vastly different franchises that just physically won't mesh together at all. But, you know, what the hell? It doesn't hurt to sort of, I mean, as we saw from the comics. Sorry, wait. Hang on. As we saw from the comics, people do have out-of-the-box thinking, so maybe it can work. Yeah, go for it, dude. Sorry.
You've got to understand that Guy was the one who suggested that, and he has a different viewing sort of mind from us, and often some of his suggestions are crazy, but they just might work.
Well, this one would work. Neighbours meets Home and Away. Yes, exactly right. That would be one show I definitely won't watch.
Home and Away and Neighbours and Death Race 2000, where you get them all in cars. That'd be a show I'd watch. Oh no, they've decapitated Alf, and reversed
Get on with it.
Bouncer.
Anyway, back into the more serious conversation. Space 1999 and Lost in Space. This one could work with the Jupiter 2 lands on Moonbase Alpha as it's hurtling through the galaxy.
Wouldn't that be fantastic if, like, the Jupiter 2 said, "You're never going to believe it. We found Earth's moon. We're finally going to get home." And they land on Moonbase Alpha and they go, we're not going home. We don't know. We're lost in space as well. That could be a good crossover. And even, you know, the special effects for Lost in Space were great. They use the same special effects in every episode. But you could almost imagine that version of the Jupiter 2 landing on 70s Moonbase and them doing a crossover story.
Yeah, I actually think that's feasible. That makes a lot of sense. But that would be funny. Yeah, the Jupiter 2 lands. Hang on, this is the moon. Where's Earth? I go, we don't freaking know. I was hoping you'd tell us. So even if Lost in Space, the Jupiter 2 guys could, Earth is in that direction. There's a sign saying Earth this way. Like they're traveling in the wrong direction. They can't go back no matter what. So.
Can you imagine Don Robinson, who's had to put up just with one girl, Judy? I mean, I guess you've got Penny underage, lands on Moonbase, and they're all in their like skin tight suits walking around. He'd think it was paradise. He'd go to the family, "See you later. I'm staying on the moon."
Absolutely, I can't argue with that at all. Spankin has said classic Battlestar versus Star Wars. Yeah, that would be a good one actually, considering they're all sort of made roughly at the same time.
It was called a lawsuit.
Jeepers creepers. You mentioned Planet of the Apes earlier on. Buck Rogers well, this would work because he travels back in time, and you just replace Taylor with Buck. Now, the only core difference is that Taylor was very cynical about the human race, whereas Buck is just a cool dude. You know, he likes discoing with Twiggy and all that sort of stuff. It would be interesting to see what they did with it.
And Nova is of course replaced by Erin Gray as Wilma, and you've got to have the 70s lycra suits because everybody loves those. But you could imagine it because the whole the premise of Buck Rogers was he was one of the last shuttle missions that got blown out and then went through a time warp and landed back on Earth in the future. But in this future, the apes have taken over, so you can have cracking Buck Rogers with Roddy McDowall. I wouldn't think it was good with the modern Planet of the Apes, but the original Planet of the Apes, I think that would have been cool.
Be very interesting to see how Buck deals with the whole different environment, whether he still is good-looking, cocky self, or whether he ends up doing the Taylor thing, having to wear the rags and just having a tough life with it all. So, believe it or not, Greens has joined us again. Blade Runner's, hang on, Blade Runner's officially in Alien Universe, I believe, and vice versa. Oh, well, there you go. So you learn something new every day. Sorry, dude, cut you off. Go for it.
You could have Twiki in it going, bitty, 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 get your hands off me, you stinking ape.
Absolutely love it. Well, the cool thing is there are plenty of different mixing of franchises. Some will work, some won't. But at least if you see them in comic book form and you go, you know what, that's a really good story. I can see that kind of happening. And yes, there's mention of fan films earlier. Batman Dead End is a classic one where it's Predators, Aliens, and Batman. Best of luck. You never know. But in terms of big ass franchises with a lot of money poured into it, it'd be curious to see how it goes. But I'm just going to finish up with this one image where I thought, well, this is an interesting mixing of franchises. Good old Grogu as Davros. What do you reckon of that, dude?
I think they'd sell 1 million of them as action figures. I don't know if it'd work, but I like Doctor Who is one of those shows I don't know. It could turn up in different shows, but I don't know if it'd work in Star Wars. There's no time travel in Star Wars at all, is there?
Well, that's exactly. Well, yeah, that's another story. $6 million man and the Borg. Yeah, exactly right. They can rebuild him because they have the technology, which is a very, very cool. How good was that? Come up with
assimilate. They have the technology to assimilate.
Yeah, I heard that. So resistance is futile. Was it not futile? It is futile. Yes, exactly right. Anyway, have some fun with it. Come up with your own ideas. And while you're doing that, it is now time for this.
A question.
All right, so this is a question. Now, Russell's watching this at the moment, and he'll probably have some thoughts and views on this particular question. But the question I'm going to ask you, Mr. Aaron, and this one's come out of completely left field. Question is, can Australia, where we're located, ever create a new sci-fi movie or TV franchise to rival the UK or the US? And before anyone writes Mad Max, okay, we got that. But Mad Max was 40 years ago now, 45 years ago. I'm talking about something now. Can Australia produce something that will just blow the pants off the planet? America has plenty of shows. England has plenty of shows. We've effectively got zilch in terms of the sci-fi side of things.
I think we absolutely could. It depends what level you're looking at. Are you looking at like a cheap show filmed locally that like breaks out globally? Because places like New Zealand have done that with what we do in the shadows and things like that. So there's absolutely no reason we couldn't do that. Or are we looking at filmed in the Gold Coast or in the Sydney or on Docklands with millions and millions of international dollars, so you can't actually tell it was filmed in Australia? There's been a couple of films recently I watched, and at the end they were filmed in Australia, including Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, I'm going to stop you right there. So before anybody starts typing out, I'm not talking about American-funded movies or TV shows. I'm talking purely 100% Australian productions, okay? Because a lot of American shows come here because we're cheap. So, so off the table, someone says, I've got an Australian movie or a TV show, and I'm going to pump it in. Australian cast, filmed in Australia. As you said, New Zealand is an excellent example. All the Lord of the Rings stuff came from those guys, and the Hobbits and various other movies. So why can't we do that here? I mean, so that's the question.
Well, they were kind of funded from overseas, though. But what we do in Shadows is one that was purely in New Zealand, and there's been a couple. What usually happens if we get a couple of talented filmmakers here that do really good stuff in Australia or New Zealand, and then Hollywood steals them because they have sort of, it's a stepping stone, creating a TV series or being a showrunner, and then it leads to bigger things. It's not a sci-fi thing, but I would point to not Orange is the New Black, Wentworth, which was a sequel to Prisoner that absolutely was huge overseas, and the showrunner from that, Pete McTighe, has now moved over to the UK, is involved in different things over there. So I think you can, whether it's oh my gosh, everybody's watching it, I don't know, because you can never predict those things. If you could predict what those things were, everyone would be making them. But, there's shows that no one thought anyone would watch and they take off and get cult followings. And there's other things that are going to be a dead set winner and they're cancelled after 3 weeks because the ratings are so bad. Again, I don't think it's impossible, but what would it be? If you knew that, you'd pitch the idea yourself if you had a dead set winner kind of thing.
Yeah, but why do you think it hasn't happened?
Well, like I said, I think it's interesting. Like you get people who do create some really amazing stuff, and then they go. Even actors here, a lot of the current crop of big actors in Hollywood are from Australia. You've got your Margot Robbies and your
Mm.
Hemsworth brothers and people like that. I just think it takes someone who has the vision to do stuff here. As you said, Peter Jackson, he started with things like Meet the Feebles and Brain Dead and things like that, and he stayed in New Zealand. He didn't go over to Hollywood when he got successful. But people like George Miller, who did Mad Max, have then gone um, over to Hollywood, and they've stayed over there. Although he does support the local Australian film industry and has tried to do as much here as possible. At the moment, I think the Australian dollar's so bad, it might actually start attracting more productions here, but that's not Australian stuff, that's international stuff. I don't know why we haven't had something that I can think of that's a huge breakout, 100% Australian made series that's gone amazing. I don't think anyone has really put anything up in the comments either that's really won. Um, Bluey, that's a cartoon. That is phenomenal worldwide, but it's a
Yeah,
cartoon.
yeah,
Number one
and
show on Disney Plus.
yeah, I accept that. Just like Neighbours was massive in England, but I'm talking science fiction shows. Otherwise,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
things
interesting.
like Bluey and Neighbours are a no-brainer.
There's been a lot of sci-fi shows here have been filmed
Yes.
here, but they're all American productions. I can't really think, apart from you said, and you ruled out Mad Max, which is a purely
Mm.
Australian thing. I mean, you'd point to stuff like Pitch Black or Space Above and Beyond and some of those shows that were 100% filmed here, but, it was more for the tax breaks than anything else kind of thing. So I don't know. Maybe it is just, well, it's obviously the right person hasn't made the right thing that's broke out. I don't know. I don't know anything
Yeah,
that
it's just
I
an
haven't.
unusual one. It's so go on.
Yeah,
So cut you off. Go on.
like I said, I just
Uh,
haven't got the magic formula for why it could be, why it would happen. I mean,
well,
the,
while you're
if you,
thinking, I mean,
yeah,
all right, I'll go. Right. So
yeah,
one of the things that because I knew people who were involved in the filmmaking business, and one of the things that they said kind of went against the Australian industry was that Australia was very against making, that's bad English, genre related things. So Russell, who's watching, and Spankin, who's watching, know of friends of ours who've made sci-fi slash horror, genre films, but they've never gone anywhere because the Australian industry doesn't really focus on that pathway. And as a consequence, people who come up with the idea of getting sci-fi films or TV shows made here can't get them financed, can't get them made. So if anything, they'll ship them up west, so go overseas. Now I don't know if that mindset has changed at all, or whether it's still in place. Because I know of people who've made these movies and like they've just not been sold here at all. So I don't know if that's related to that at all, but it is an interesting one. How like we're just not on the map at all regarding sci-fi products that have been produced, written here, created here, starring Australian cast, and have just blown the world apart. If you want a sci-fi version of Bluey in live action, whatever that is a good
yeah.
example of that. So yeah, it was just
Well,
interesting to bring that up. Yeah.
the other thing that I think we have a problem with here is the tall poppy syndrome, where anyone that does too well in Australia is then ended up not being liked by Australians. The last thing I watched that was genre was on Netflix. It was a series called Pine Gap, which was filmed
Mm.
at Pine Gap, and I guess that was still an American show about Pine Gap in Australia and weird stuff that happened there. But I actually found it cringeworthily bad and hard to watch. Yeah, Channel 9. I mean, even the ABC used to invest in Doctor Who once in a while.
Mm.
You get different people putting backing in, but the only thing I could think of that might do it, Working Dog Productions that were the D
Mm.
generation, and they went on to do the Dish and um,
Yep.
the Castle and things like that. If they decided to do a genre sci-fi or horror show or something, I think they would all be based in Australia, would be able to do it well. It'd have that sort of Australian sense of humor, and it could take off. But they've never really done genre. They
Mm.
do things like Have You Been Paying Attention now, and
Mm.
um, some of the other comedy stuff, which I think is good. And it does have some international appeal. But you'd need a company like that was based in Australia, had people who know the Australian industry, they're able to reach out and get a lot of Australian talent to work for them. And they just do a sci-fi show that could kind of be like Wellington Confidential, sorry, what is it, Paranormal, or something like that. And it just is off-center enough and funny enough to take off. I could see something like that happening.
Very cool. And just to finish up, Greens has said when it comes, because I think Greens is based overseas, when it comes to building things, no one wants anything made 100% in one place. That's true. Want it manufactured one place and assembled in another, so they can use the laws to say made in whatever. Yeah, that's fair enough. I would just look at. There's no answer to this the question. It's just one of those things that has popped up. I agree with Spankin. The Australian accent kind of just sucks as well, but apparently Americans love it. Yeah, sorry, dude. Just quickly go for it.
That's kind of what I was going to mention. Do you remember when episode 2 and 3 were filmed here, and you had all the A cast were international, but then you had all the sort of B and C cast, and they were local, and Australians hated that. They're like, "Oh, it sounds like Australian." Overseas, they didn't mind it, but for us, it just didn't work because it didn't sound alien. It sounded like Summer Bay. Someone from Summer Bay was selling some death sticks.
Indeed, exactly right. But they had to go home and rethink their life. So Ads has made a point. It's several Aussie TV shows for kids, actually. They've done reasonably well overseas. That's very, very true. And Jeff Rose has said young adult content has been made massive overseas. The Girl from Tomorrow example. What I'm talking about is just the equivalent of a Star Trek or a Doctor Who made in Australia, sells overseas. The whole world just goes completely burko. Hasn't happened. Probably will never happen. And the film thing, take Mad Max out. There's not really much to turn back onto. But speaking of TV, you go on. Go.
Sorry, just one last thing. Look at what happens when something like Kath and Kim breaks really big overseas. Americans remake it rather than actually show the Australian version.
Yeah, so maybe some of the Australian culture is a bit of a hard one to sell. Anyway, we'll have to wait and see. So, as we said, there's been plenty of stuff that has been made, but it just hasn't really kicked all the goals. One show that you could argue may or may not have kicked all the goals, and it finished yesterday, is the old Acolyte. Now, for those who haven't watched it, there are going to be some spoilers. Deal with it, all right? We're just not going to go straight out. It's all done. It finished yesterday. The season is done and dusted. Excuse me. It has polarized Star Wars fans left, right, and center completely amazingly. Some love it, some despise it. And the funny thing is, now we got asked multiple times. Aaron has heard from people who wanted us to do a review show. For those who are watching us for the first time or aren't familiar, we actually used to look at Star Wars shows and analyze them in one week at a time for every episode. And unlike Aaron, who's really been focused on the Acolyte and going through all the details, I've just watched it as a normal person, right? Because I tend to tear these things apart and just really analyze every bit. Just watched it as a normal person, and believe it or not, I actually didn't mind it. But Aaron, you weren't happy, mate. Tell us, what did you think of the old Acolyte?
Well, first, you talked about kicking goals. This could kick so many home goals that I just couldn't believe it. And look, when I say I hated this, I don't hate it. I watched it, and it just was underwhelming. And for me, if a Star Wars is underwhelming, I hate it. Like, it's just my way of saying it. I hated the writing. There were so many things in this that just didn't make sense. You said it was okay. How can a twin disguise herself by cutting her hair off when she's got a freaking big witch tattoo on her forehead? Is the Jedi blind?
So what happened in my case? I wanted, even from a couple of years ago, I thought, the Acolyte will be something really different, right? It said 100 years or 75 years before Phantom Menace. It has the potential to be really dark and really, really good and juicy, a bit like Andor. And of course, it wasn't that. It was very family friendly. It was very, very fluffy. And I found, even watching the early episodes, I just switch the brain off and go, all right, it's all new. It was set in a different era, and I'll just just watch it. I read all the reviews afterwards, all the analysis that went on, and I thought, it's all justified. It all makes sense. But I thought, I'll just take it for what it is. Watched every episode, didn't talk about it really with anybody. Got to the end of the episode yesterday and go, you know what? As a piece of entertainment, I didn't mind it. But I can understand that if you analyze it, there's holes everywhere. And that's, I think, the angle that you're coming from. Go for it.
The problem for me is this. Disney have so many different Star Wars series pitched at different age groups. You've got the really
Yeah.
kiddie friendly stuff for preschoolers, and then you've got the slightly older stuff that's for, I guess, kids to teenagers, and then you've got the CGI stuff that is really anyone can watch and has good plots and things. And then you've got the other end of the scale, which is Andor, which I think some Star Wars fans said was boring, but I thought that was really well written. What I don't like is when a series doesn't do well and they go, well, we're writing it for a different age group. No, don't, like, write it for everybody. It's not like kids can understand like complex stories and things as well. You shouldn't have stuff where, they write stuff for plot rather than what should naturally unfold. Things happen because the plot makes them happen. They contradict themselves all the way through. The thing is, maybe I'm just a bad viewer where I have these expectations of, if you set something up in the first couple of episodes, you then answer it by the end of the series. It's happened with Doctor Who, where underwhelming finale, maybe stuff will be answered in the future. With this, they set up mysteries and stuff, and they didn't really answer it, or they changed what the mysteries were. There were 2 episodes, I'll ask you about this, Dags, which were flashbacks, but they weren't flashbacks from anyone's point of view. You could maybe say it was the Jedi, or maybe say it was the kids, but it wasn't specifically pitched as that. So they show one flashback episode what happens, and then that flashback episode is actually lied to the audience, because you see the flashback again later, and there's different things that happen. If you had said this was from the little girl's point of view and now it's from the Jedi's point of view, it makes sense. But when it's not framed as anything but a flashback, you have to accept what's in it, because they haven't said this is a person's memory that can be wrong. And they did the same thing twice. And so I'm watching it going, well, this didn't like, I don't know what they're trying to say, because if they said, oh, now we're going back and showing you what really happened and the Jedi are telling you what went down, I understand it. But I just thought it was really sloppily put together by doing it like that.
Yeah, there are certain parts that don't gel, and when you cast an analytical eye, you go, "Hang on, there's a little bit of inconsistency here." One of the things that someone pointed out is that May still killed, was it the Jedi's from the start? Trinity and the Wookiee, and, well, actually, no, not the Wookiee, but the other 2 guys, right? So she's still guilty of the murder, even if she doesn't remember it now, right? But she's still physically guilty. So, but yeah, I think if you watched all the episodes back to back, you'd be sitting there going, "Hang on, that doesn't make sense. Why are you doing this?" And I think some of it has been done. They've cut corners in the story to get to the end result. Okay, how can we make May the good guy, make the sister the bad guy, introduce a bad guy, and show that the Jedi are bad, if that makes sense, and the whole lot in between. There's a lot of filling. There's a lot of fluff. You can almost say cut it right down. I think as a film, it probably would have worked really well. Right, cut out all the extraneous
Yeah.
bits, but think about the story and how it's all been written properly. And I found, without going through it with a fine tooth comb, I go, all right, that's what they've given us. So be it, Jedi. But I agree with you. If you really like tear it apart, you're going to find bits that just don't add up. And I think they're working on the view that the audience is just focusing on the core parts and not going into the intricate details. Yeah.
Well, it is one of those things. I like twists, but not if they're unbelievable because of how they go down. You have May, who you think is the acolyte, and she's going after the Jedi, and then her actual motivations turn on a dime, where she's like, I'm not being your acolyte anymore. I just want to go and find now my sister. You're just like, no, that's not how it happens. There's a lot of stuff like that where there's character motivation is not anything in it. Here's a good one for you. You've got
Mm,
Basil, who I think is Basil the
mm,
Rat from the Faulty Towers
yep.
episode. He's on the Jedi side, on the Jedi side, on the Jedi side, then goes and sabotages the Jedi's ship. Why?
Yeah, I think I couldn't work that out. I was thinking some people thought was Saul trying to shoot down May, and I think it was the tractor beam personally, and he disabled the tractor beam. That's my guess. Otherwise, I don't know. A few people have asked that question: why did Basil sabotage the ship and make it all crash? I don't know what the deal is with that.
Here's
So,
another question. The Shrek Jedi goes, go and form a perimeter, 5 clicks around the castle.
yeah, I know.
So what does form a perimeter mean? Like, but all the Jedi just go together. I just like, what?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
it's
I
just
agree. They all caught up
mind.
later on. And there's a whole group of them going, well, hang on. They're supposed to be in a circle, guys.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
I agree with you.
there was a lot of stuff like that. And I don't know if you saw in the episode released yesterday, you saw it when the castle or the fortress burnt, it was rocks. And then you go back to this episode and it's clearly burnt wood. I'm like, there was none of that burnt wood in the episodes that we just saw. And you know what? I could have probably, if they could have probably turned it in the last episode, if they'd given some explanations. The thing that annoys me is the characters that were looking for explanations are dead now. If Sol had found out that Plagueis was behind it all and he'd used the switch in his first experiment to try and create life and it didn't work because they were twins instead of one being, I'm like, okay, well, now I understand a little bit about what's happening here. And he works it out because he was the Jedi intimately involved with everything that's going on. But he's dead, so it doesn't really matter to anyone anymore. The mind-blowingly stupid stuff, like they go to May, okay, so the Jedi can't find us, we're going to just wipe your mind and leave you. Why doesn't she just go? Why does she just not go with them? Like, even if she doesn't want to train, she can go with them, and when the heat is off, then she can go about her business. I just thought there was a lot of stuff that just didn't make sense.
So what I took out of it, from my perspective, and in keeping it relatively simple, I like the idea that they did mention, and this happened in the scene, and this one I did applaud that, and I've been saying this for 20 years, that there are people in the Star Wars universe, and this is in the universe, who don't like the Jedi, don't trust them, think they're a cult, religious group, blah 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 blah. And it was proven by the guy on the right who said exactly the same thing, right? And I thought, beauty, I'm not the
Yeah.
only one as a fan who says that. In universe, people think the same way. Not everybody trusts the Jedi. That I really liked, right? That really worked for me. I found it interesting that, and I'm shit ass with the names. That's why I had to write them down on the damn screen. Venestra actually did the whole cover up with Sol at the end. This is how we find out why the Jedi Council and the Phantom Menace don't know about what happened here, because it's all been covered up by her. And she said, Sol went rogue, knocked everybody off. And I thought, well, that's interesting. She's pulling a massive shifty here, telling porcupines to everybody. And of course, when she catches up with Yoda at the end, chances are she tells the same story. Sol went nuts, killed everybody, end of story, push it under the carpet. I kind of like that. I really did. So what it's doing is it's showing cracks in the whole Jedi concept, where there used to be the Peace and Guardians of the Old Republic, but there are people telling lies. And if she's doing it, then chances are some other people are as well. That stuff I really quite liked. The whole thing about Quimir, this dude, right, as being the bad guy. Yeah, I mean, throughout the show, it worked. When he revealed himself as being, I'm now a Sith, he just self-anoints himself. I kind of don't think that kind of worked. And of course, once he decided to do the whole thing with the helmet, and the gag with the helmet, if you didn't pick up on it, we've got to find the picture of it, is that when you see him, he says, and I like the idea of this, the helmet suppresses all senses. So you can't hear, you can't smell, you can't you can't do anything, right? I really liked that. I thought that was really, really different. And of course, the funny thing is that in the final episode, when Vanessa is looking at the dead body of Sol, he's looking at her. So, dude, you can't see anything. The freaking helmet has no eyepieces. So, but that was for the audience. I got that. But I like the idea of it, even though the downside is he doesn't look at all intimidating, being this skinny, weedy guy with this thing on his head. So I've got to admit, visually, it's not a Darth Vader, for example. So there were some parts that I thought worked quite well. The whole May Oshi thing, I mean, people guessed 100 years ago that Oshi was going to turn into the bad girl, the apprentice or whatever else. That was a bit of a no-brainer. I agree with you. The idea of wiping May's mind, I don't know what the deal was with that. And you had said ages ago, and I really like this idea that, if I can find a picture of her, that Kirill, had she been the Sith master or apprentice or whatever, would have been an absolute ripper, although it's probably telegraphed in the way she looks. So, yeah, there were some parts that worked for me, even though there's a lot of holes in it and a lot of bits you can go, yeah, that's just kind of dumb. But
yeah,
anyway,
it's one of those things. I don't know if it's the writers or the direction that they go with Star Wars. It's always like they're saying, we're not writing this for the fans, we're writing it for the general audience. But Star Wars is such a big franchise. You should write it for the fans, because there's such a big fan base that if you do it for the fans and the fans love it, the actual social media buzz about the episodes will make the general audience watch it anyway. You cannot find a good review online for the Acolyte. Every one that comes up is like another dud, another dud. I don't like that because I love Star Wars, and it's really sad seeing, you know, it's been torn down again. It's torn down again. Do you know what? If you were like lightsabers, there were some really good lightsaber battles in this series.
Yes.
You've got Greens are plenty saying, "I wish like love Star Wars because of the space battles." There wasn't very much in this. Interesting to see them flying between the planet rings at the end. That was good. At least this final episode looked like it had money in it.
Yeah,
There's
this
been
I
big
did like. I thought this looked spectacular. It looked awesome. Yeah, go on.
yeah, there's been a lot of stuff online on how could there be 22 million an episode on this because it doesn't look at. And you know what? I agree. I look at it and go, that looks like a TV series, not like a movie. And I think most of the other stuff has looked cinematic. I mean, it isn't. If you're going to spend that much money on it, I would have expected a better product. Maybe it was too hyped. Maybe a lot of people had the idea of the Acolyte from the video game, which the cutscenes were brilliant, and they wanted that. I don't know. I think it wandered too much at the beginning. When there was only 1 week left, and they started introducing new characters like the Senate and stuff like that, I was like, oh, you need to be wrapping up the character arcs we've got, not throwing new ones into it. The Jedis were the keepers of the peace for 1,000 generations. Why do we always seem the Senate like distrust and hate the Jedi? This isn't in the High Republic, aren't they meant to? The Republic doesn't have an army at this point. Surely the Jedis are the ones keeping the peace everywhere. And there doesn't seem to be any big controversy like in the Clone Wars or anything like that. So I don't know why the Jedi are not liked and mistrusted. And I know you want to say something, but I'll say something else very quick. Tennille said to me, I don't like this because I'm watching this and the Jedi are weirdos and they're a cult and I really don't like the Jedi. And I said to her, do you know what? It is coming across like that, but I think that's more the writers writing them like that than how the Jedi, I imagine, would have been. So I think the Jedi have been given a disservice by the way they were written in this. If you look at how the Jedi are trained, where they're taken away as kids and they're given strict, rules of how to use the Force and detach themselves, the Jedi should just be about perfect. They should be, the noble knights that we all imagine them, and only in the downfall at the end do we see them stray from that. Okay, maybe that's my ideal version of Star Wars, but I wasn't, happy with this series. It's not a series that I would go is up there with The Mandalorian or Andor or anything like that.
I think given enough time, it might find an audience. And as I said, if it was edited down into a movie, it'd be quite good, in my opinion. Regarding the Jedi and how they're referenced by the Senate, you got to remember whoever becomes the Chancellor inherits the Jedi. They don't trust them, they can't join them, they can't understand how they work. So they're not always going to be good bedfellows all the time. And as that guy said, that senator said, sometimes they're a bit of a shifty group. And as it turns out, they are a bit of a shifty group. Adam's joined us. Made Crystal's bleeding look way too simple. True, but it was good. At least they did it, which is funny because someone said, well, why didn't Anakin do that in Revenge of the Sith, turn his blue saber red? But, it is what it is. I thought it was good to see it. I had no problem with it. It was all good stuff. We're about to wrap up. Two things, of course. We got to see the back of Yoda's head. That was finally very, very cool. Groovy. What happened to the Jedi, the Guardians of Peace and Justice? But Ben Kenobi said that. And, of course, he would say that from their point of view. Everything hinges on your point of view. And, of course, Darth Plagueis made an appearance. This is, I guess, probably one of the coolest things around. Hiding in the shadows there. No idea what he's up to. But I thought that was actually an interesting little moment, and it has been confirmed it is Darth Plagueis. And they've kept the species. So he's a Mun. You see those guys in the cantina in the original movie, in New Hope. And, of course, Cad Bane, I think, is a Mun as well. I think.
And Psylocke in the X-Men movies was Olivia Munn.
Yeah, good on you, did. Someone's made that joke already. So, and that was a George Lucas idea when they did the Darth Plagueis novel, which is not canon anymore. They've kept the same species, which I thought was kind of cool. So, very good. Look, in the end, You are right. It's copped a lot of flack. Maybe when the dust has settled, some people look back upon it and go, it wasn't that bad. But I agree with you. There's a lot of bits that don't add up. That's why I think at some point, if someone makes a film out of it, hopefully they can cut out the bits that don't gel. But it has divided the fan base quite significantly for whatever reason. But I found, as someone who really deep dives into a lot of Star Wars stuff, just switching my brain off and just taking it at face value without really analyzing it, and I didn't. I actually found it quite entertaining and I didn't mind it. So there you go. Very good stuff. There's a lot of comments coming up regarding Acolyte. But guess what, fans? It is time to us to... Hang on, what's it say? They are expanding the universe with not amazing characters. Feels like they're trying to rubbish the old stuff here, I guess. If you do end up watching the episode again, one thing you must look at, and I've got to put this out, I had to laugh, right? When you're talking about the Jedi, they all land on the planet and they all run off into the temple. When you get a chance, watch the background guys, right? Not this dude, but all the background guys, this big group. They have picked the worst extras. They can't act for shit. They're just standing around like a bunch of turkeys and go, no wonder when she said, go off, form a perimeter 5 clicks around, they ran off, and it's like, mate, get actors who can act, for crying out loud. Even extras can act properly. They're just, shit.
The best one for that ever, if anyone ever watch the second Disney movie, it's gone blank. Not the Force Awakens, not the Rise of Skywalker, the middle one.
The Last Jedi.
The Last Jedi. You have that spaceship that goes into hyperspace and destroys the massive ship, and you've got the A actors looking out the window going, oh wow, and you've got the extras looking around in the background, and you're like, you've just got the most freaking hugest explosion you've ever seen, and the extras aren't even interested in seeing it. You're absolutely right. We need a higher level of background featured extras in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, and that ship that got destroyed was called the Supremacy, of course. And how do I know that? Because I'm a nerd. Now, before we finish, if you haven't done so already, be sure to check out the Sci-Fi Zone socials on YouTube. There's always stuff coming out besides this show. And, of course, Aaron Storm, mate. How exciting is this?
Yes, we've had a busy week. Lots of collectibles come through. We had a big Doctor Who collection come in yesterday with some really rare figures, but a lot of it has already sold today. So that's good. But as always, we've got a lot of Star Wars stuff. If you're out in the area, come in and say hi. Always up for a chat.
Very good. And guess what, Diggs? You've picked the wrong time. We've just finished, and we're about to. You have to go back and rewatch the episode from scratch. We are literally about to go, so we're going to buzz off. Leave you to it. Try and stay warm. Enjoy Star Wars in one way, shape, or form. Mr. Aaron, party hard, rock on, and we'll speak to you next time. Okay.
May the Force be with you.
Indeedy, doody, die. Okay. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.